In the beginning of Genesis 21, God fulfills his promise to Sarah and Abraham. Sarah, who was long past her childbearing years, conceives and gives birth to a son. They name him Isaac, which means he laughs. This name is a nod to the fact that both Abraham and Sarah had laughed in disbelief when God first told them they would have a son in their old age. Abraham circumcises Isaac when he is 8 days old, as commanded by God. The birth of Isaac is a moment of great joy and celebration. Sarah exclaims, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." She also says, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." The joy of Isaac's birth is soon overshadowed by conflict. When Isaac is weaned, Abraham holds a great feast. During the celebration, Sarah sees Ishmael, the son of Abraham and Hagar, making fun of Isaac. This makes Sarah furious. She goes to Abraham and demands, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." This request distresses Abraham greatly because Ishmael is also his son. God intervenes and tells Abraham not to be so distressed. He instructs Abraham to listen to Sarah, saying, "For through Isaac will your offspring be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." The next morning, Abraham gives Hagar some food and a skin of water, and sends her and Ishmael away into the wilderness of Beersheba. Hagar and Ishmael wander in the desert until their water runs out. Hagar, in despair, puts Ishmael under a bush and goes a short distance away, saying to herself, "I cannot watch the boy die." She begins to weep. God hears the boy's cry, and an angel of God calls to Hagar from heaven, asking, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." At that moment, God opens Hagar's eyes, and she sees a well of water. She fills the skin with water and gives Ishmael a drink. God is with the boy as he grows up. Ishmael becomes an archer and lives in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother gets him a wife from Egypt. Abraham and Abimelech, the king of Gerar, reached an agreement. Abimelech and his commander Phicol approach Abraham and say, "God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not lie to me or to my children or to my descendants." Abraham accepts their terms. However, Abraham complains to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken over. Abimelech claims to know nothing about it. Then Abraham gave Abimelech some sheep and herds, and the two men made a covenant. To mark the agreement, Abraham sets aside 7 lambs. When Abimelech asks what the 7 lambs are for, Abraham explains that they are proof that he dug the well. Because of this oath, the place is called Beersheba, which means well of oath. After making the covenant, Abimelech and Phicol return to the land of the Philistines. Abraham plants a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and worships the Lord, the eternal God. He lives in the land of the Philistines for a long time. After God had tested his obedience, Abraham was enjoying a period of peace and prosperity. The divine promise of a great nation seemed to be on its way to being fulfilled through his beloved son, Isaac. One day, however, the tranquility was interrupted by an unmistakable voice. God, in an incomprehensible act, spoke to Abraham and gave him an order that would chill anyone's blood. "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." The order was devastating. God was not just asking him to give up his son, but to sacrifice him in an act of absolute faith. Abraham, without a moment's hesitation, rose early the next morning, saddled his donkey, and cut the wood for the burnt offering. He called 2 of his servants and his son Isaac, and together they set out for the designated place. Despite the pain and confusion that must have overwhelmed him, Abraham maintained his faith, walking with a firm purpose toward a destination that no one but he understood. For 3 days, Abraham, Isaac, and the 2 servants walked toward the land of Moriah. The silence of the journey was filled with the tension of the impending trial. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He ordered his servants to wait with the donkey, while he and his son went up to worship God. He took the wood and placed it on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As they ascended the mountain, Isaac, with the innocence of a child, broke the silence with a question that pierced his father's heart like a sword. "My father, here is the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham, with a heavy heart but unwavering faith, responded with a voice that radiated divine confidence. "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." Abraham's words, despite the painful reality they faced, were a testament to his complete trust that God would fulfill his promise, even in the most desperate of circumstances. When they arrived at the designated place, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. With a lump in his throat and immense sadness, he bound his beloved son Isaac and placed him on the wood. With the knife in hand, Abraham prepared to obey God's command, ready to sacrifice his own son. At that crucial moment, an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." With the knife about to descend, Abraham replied, "Here I am." The angel, with a voice of relief, told him, "Do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Filled with joy and gratitude, Abraham looked around and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. Instead of sacrificing Isaac, he took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering. Abraham called that place Jehovah-Jireh, which means the Lord will provide, in commemoration of that moment of faith and divine provision. The angel of the Lord spoke to him again, confirming his blessing on Abraham and his descendants for his unconditional obedience, promising him that his offspring would be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. At the age of 127, Sarah, Abraham's beloved wife, died in Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Her death marked a deeply sorrowful moment for Abraham, who mourned and wept for her. Although he was a man of great faith and a recipient of God's promises, Abraham was not spared from the universal experience of loss. In his grief, he stood up from beside his dead wife and approached the local people, the sons of Heth, to make a request. Abraham, a sojourner in a foreign land, needed a proper burial place for Sarah. He spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, "I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead." The Hittites, recognizing Abraham as a mighty prince in their midst, responded with great respect. They offered him a choice of their finest tombs, telling him, "You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. No one of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead." However, Abraham, wanting to own the land outright and not just be a guest, bowed before them and insisted on purchasing a specific place. Abraham had his eyes set on a particular piece of land owned by a man named Ephron the Hittite. He asked the sons of Heth to intercede on his behalf to Ephron so he could purchase the cave of Machpelah for its full price. Ephron, in a public display of generosity and respect, offered to give Abraham the field and the cave for free, saying, "No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead." But Abraham, a man of integrity, insisted on paying. He weighed out the silver for Ephron, 400 shekels of silver, according to the merchant's standard. This was a significant sum, but Abraham paid it willingly. Thus the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah near Mamre, including the cave and all the trees within its borders, was deeded to Abraham as a permanent burial possession. This transaction, conducted openly before all the sons of Heth, established Abraham's first land ownership in the Promised Land, secured as a final resting place for his family. Abraham, now old and well advanced in years, knew his time was drawing to a close. With his final days in mind, he called his most trusted and oldest servant, the one in charge of all his possessions. Abraham made him swear a solemn oath, placing his hand under his thigh, a deeply significant gesture in that culture. The oath was a sacred promise. The servant was to go back to Abraham's homeland and his own family to find a wife for his son, Isaac. Abraham was adamant that Isaac should not marry a woman from the Canaanites, among whom they now lived. He assured the servant that God, who had brought him out of his homeland and promised this new land to his descendants, would send an angel before him to ensure the mission's success. The servant, laden with gifts from Abraham's wealth, set out on his journey. He took 10 camels and traveled to Mesopotamia to the city of Nahor. Upon his arrival, he knelt the camels by a well outside the city, as it was evening, the time when women came out to draw water. The servant prayed to God, asking for a sign. He asked that the woman who was meant to be Isaac's wife would not only offer him a drink, but also volunteer to water his camels. This was a request for a clear and unmistakable sign of God's guidance. Before the servant had even finished his prayer, a young woman named Rebekah appeared. She was the daughter of Bethuel, who was the son of Milcah and Nahor, Abraham's brother. Rebekah was exceptionally beautiful and a virgin. She came to the well, drew water, and as she was leaving, the servant ran to her. He asked her for a little water from her jar. Rebekah immediately responded, "Drink, my lord." And after he had finished, she said, "I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough." She ran back and forth, drawing water for all 10 of his camels until they were satisfied. The servant watched her in silent awe, knowing this was the sign he had prayed for. He gave her a gold nose ring and 2 gold bracelets, asking about her family, and if there was room for him to stay the night. Rebekah told him about her family and said, "We have plenty of straw and fodder as well as room for you to spend the night." She then ran home and told her family everything. Rebekah's brother Laban heard her story and saw the expensive gifts. He rushed out to the well, greeted the servant warmly, and brought him back to their home. They prepared a meal for him, but the servant refused to eat until he had delivered his message. He recounted the entire story of his master Abraham, the oath, his prayer at the well, and how Rebekah was the divine answer. Laban and his father, Bethuel, responded, "This is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed." The servant then bowed down in worship to God. He presented Rebekah and her family with more gifts of gold, silver, and clothing. The next morning, the servant was ready to leave with Rebekah. Her mother and brother asked for her to stay a little longer, but the servant insisted he must return to his master. They then called Rebekah and asked her directly, "Will you go with this man?" She responded with a simple and resolute, "I will go." So they blessed Rebekah and sent her on her way. She and her servant girls rode the camels, following Abraham's servant back to Canaan. As they approached Abraham's camp, Isaac was out in the fields meditating. He looked up and saw the camels. Rebekah saw Isaac and asked the servant who he was. Upon learning it was Isaac, she quickly dismounted from her camel and covered her face with a veil. The servant told Isaac everything that had happened. Isaac then took Rebekah to the tent of his mother, Sarah. He married her, and she became his wife. Isaac found comfort and love in Rebekah and was consoled after his mother's death. When Abraham was already very old, he took another wife named Keturah. Together they have 6 children: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. These sons become chiefs of several tribes. Abraham, in his later years, gives gifts to these sons and sends them eastward, so that they do not interfere with Isaac's inheritance. He then gives everything he owns to Isaac, firmly establishing him as the sole heir of the covenant God made with him. At the ripe old age of 175, Abraham dies. He is buried by his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, in the cave of Machpelah, the very place he had purchased to bury his wife, Sarah. This final act of burial brings the two half-brothers together in a shared moment of mourning, fulfilling the promise that Ishmael would not be completely forgotten. After Abraham's death, God blesses Isaac, and he settles near Beer Lahai Roi. The focus of the story shifts to Isaac and his wife, Rebekah. After 20 years of marriage, Rebekah is unable to have children. Isaac prays to the Lord for her, and she becomes pregnant with twins. During the pregnancy, Rebekah feels the babies struggling violently within her and asks God why this is happening. The Lord tells her that two nations are in her womb, and two peoples will be separated from birth. The older will serve the younger, a reversal of the typical birthright tradition. When the babies are born, the first is covered in red hair and is named Esau. The second, grasping his brother's heel, is named Jacob. As the boys grow up, their personalities and interests diverge. Esau becomes a skilled hunter and a man of the outdoors, making him his father's favorite. Jacob, on the other hand, is a quiet man who prefers to stay near the tents, making him his mother's favorite. One day, Esau returns from the hunt, exhausted and starving. He sees that Jacob is cooking a red lentil stew. Esau, overcome with hunger, says to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob seizes the opportunity, saying, "First, sell me your birthright." Esau, seeing no value in the birthright when his life is in danger, agrees to the trade, swearing an oath to give it to Jacob. In this seemingly insignificant act, Esau despises his birthright, trading it away for a bowl of stew. This sets the stage for future conflict and deception between the brothers. A famine strikes the land, just as it had in his father's time. Isaac, fearing for his family, travels to Gerar, where he meets Abimelech, the king of the Philistines. God appears to Isaac and tells him not to go down to Egypt, but to stay in the land he will show him. God reaffirms the covenant he made with Abraham, promising to bless Isaac and multiply his descendants. Despite this divine reassurance, Isaac, like his father, falls into a familiar pattern of fear. When the men of the area ask about his wife, Rebekah, Isaac, worried they will kill him to take her, says she is his sister. One day, however, King Abimelech sees Isaac caressing Rebekah and realizes the truth. Abimelech confronts Isaac, who admits his fear. The king, angered by the deception, issues a decree that anyone who harms Isaac or Rebekah will be put to death. God's blessing is evident in Isaac's life. He plants crops in that very land and reaps 100-fold harvest, a sign of his great prosperity. His wealth in flocks, herds, and servants grows so vast that the Philistines become envious. They respond by stopping up the wells that Isaac's father, Abraham, had dug. The Philistines fill the wells with dirt, a hostile act designed to drive Isaac away. Abimelech, the king, asks Isaac to leave, saying, "Go away from us. You have become too powerful for us." Isaac complies and moves his camp to the valley of Gerar. In the valley of Gerar, Isaac's servants redig the wells that Abraham had dug, only to be met with constant disputes from the local herdsmen. Each time they dig a new well, the herdsmen of Gerar claim it, leading to a series of confrontations. The names Isaac gives to the wells reflect this conflict: Esek, meaning dispute, and Sitnah, meaning accusation. Eventually, Isaac moves on and digs another well, and this time, there is no conflict. He names it Rehoboth, meaning broad places, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room and we will flourish in the land." He then moves on to Beersheba. In Beersheba, the Lord appears to Isaac, reaffirming his covenant and blessing. God tells Isaac, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you, and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." In response, Isaac builds an altar there and worships the Lord. Meanwhile, Abimelech, along with his military commander and a friend, travels from Gerar to see Isaac. Isaac confronts them, asking why they have come now after having driven him away. Abimelech responds that they have seen that the Lord is clearly with him, and they wish to make a treaty of peace. They swear an oath, promising not to harm one another, and Isaac prepares a feast for them. The next morning, they part in peace. That very day, Isaac's servants report that they have found water in the new well they have dug in Beersheba. Isaac names the well Sheba, meaning oath or seven, commemorating the covenant made with Abimelech. The chapter concludes with a brief note on Esau's life. At the age of 40, Esau marries two Hittite women, Judith and Basemath. This decision is a source of great grief and bitterness for his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, as these marriages bring foreign wives into the family, going against the tradition of marrying within their kin. This sets the stage for future tension and conflict within the family.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe to our channel, Bible Space. By doing so, you not only support us, but you also ensure you don't miss any of the fascinating stories we're preparing for you. Every week, we'll uncover more stories of faith, courage, and miracles. Turn on the bell so YouTube will notify you every time we upload a new video. Join our community and continue exploring the stories that have shaped human history.